Hey all, Ron here from Military Images Magazine with a new episode of Life on the Civil War Research Trail. Today's story comes to us from a century ago. The year is 1925. Calvin Coolidge is president of the United States. The economy is going along pretty well. The First World War still burns in recent memories. The Civil War, now 60 years in the past, was fading into the recesses of the American memory. With every passing veteran, the bonds that tied a generation to those tumultuous times were slipping away. The most prominent generals and political figures had died. Their memories and those they commanded are now honored in stone and bronze in public places around the country and battlefields that dotted the South. One of those battlefields is Shiloh, and a visit to the hallowed grounds in that year, 1925, is the subject of a book titled The Story of Shiloh by Otto Eisenschimmel. This book was given to me recently as a gift from Zach Abramson of Florence, Alabama. Mr. Abramson saw a post of mine and contacted me looking for a good home for the book. I promised him I'd be a good caretaker, so thank you so much, Zach. The opening of the book describes a meeting between the author, that's Otto Eisenschimmel, and let me get a picture of him for you to look at. His life dates are 1880 to 1963, and the superintendent of Shiloh National Military Park, a man named DeLong Rice. His life dates were 1872 to 1929. Neither man knew each other before Otto showed up on the battlefield. I want to read this passage to you. Listen for Otto raising these what ifs about Ulysses S. Grant relating to Abraham Lincoln and a mention of his father, who he states fought in the battle. So let me go ahead and read the passage. Starts, one day in the late winter of 1925, I stood in the administration building of Shiloh National Military Park looking at a wall map. This map is not right, I remarked to my companion. In the first place, it hangs wrong. The Tennessee River at Pittsburgh Landing does not run from west to east. It runs from south to north. And on the day of the battle, Dill's Branch was not the little body of water you see here. If it had been, the story of Shiloh might have had a different ending. I was about to continue when I felt a hand on my shoulder. Looking around, I saw behind me a man who came very close to my ideal of a Confederate officer. Tall, handsome, dashing, dark-haired, black-eyed, with a small mustache and sideburns. He flashed a heartwarming smile at me. My name is Rice, he said, DeLong Rice. I am superintendent of Shiloh National Park. Will you do me the honor of stepping into my office? He spoke with a soft southern drawl which fell pleasantly on one's ear. We entered his office and I introduced myself in turn. I want to make a little confession to you, DeLong began after we were seated. I've been superintendent of this park for nearly 11 years. When I first came here, I too noticed that the map in the entrance hall was drawn so that what should be north appears to be the east. For a time it irked me, but later I became immune. You know how these things are apt to grow on you, even faulty ones. I almost began to think that the Tennessee River did flow the wrong way. He shrugged his shoulders and smiled indifferently, like a little boy who has been caught in his mother's pantry. My resistance had sunk low, he went on. Why bother, I said to myself. Thousands of people pass through here every year, asking pointless questions or asking no questions at all. No one notices that map, and if anyone did, he would not see anything wrong with it. Well, it's going to be changed tomorrow. Now tell me, please, why are you interested in the Battle of Shiloh? I'm interested in it for two reasons, I replied. This is Otto speaking. One is personal. My father fought here. The second is historical. I consider Shiloh the most dramatic battle ever fought on the American soil, if not the most dramatic battle ever fought anywhere. True, Gettysburg was bigger, Vicksburg more decisive, Antietam even more bloody. But no other battle was interwoven with so many momentous ifs. If any one of these ifs had gone the other way, it would have had been incalculable in its consequences. Other battles had their ifs too, of course. If Pickett's Gettysburg charge had carried, if Hooker had not lost confidence in himself at Chancellorsville, if Bragg had pursued Rosecrans after Chickamauga. But the consequences, I think, would have been mild in comparison. The end of the Civil War might have been hastened or delayed, but the final outcome was a foregone conclusion. Mr. Rice had listened attentively, and when I stopped for a breath, he urged me on. If Shiloh had been lost by Grant, I resumed my discourse, the outcome of the Civil War would not have been changed either, but American history would have been, because I believe that if Grant had lost this battle, which he richly deserved to, and almost did, Lincoln would not have been assassinated when and where he was. Possibly he would not have been assassinated at all, for it was the theater party given by him to the victor of Appomattox Courthouse which provided the unique opportunity for murder of which Booth availed himself. But if Grant's star had set that night on the banks of the Tennessee River, he probably would have vanished from the scene. The theater party might not have taken place, and someone else would have been president of the United States during the 8 most critical years of the Reconstruction period. And that, I concluded, is why the Battle of Shiloh seems to me of such great historical significance. Some interesting what ifs. Later in the book, Otto shares this observation by Superintendent Rice. Rice says, "The Battle of Shiloh is a thing of the past," he declared. "The lines which divided the blue and the gray have long disappeared. Today we are all Americans, glorying in a common history, without rancor, without resentment. All that is left of the battle is its romance, the valor, the devotion of its soldiers. To me, Shiloh is a heroic saga. To me, it will never be anything but the story of Shiloh." So there's the passages that give you a sense, the flavor of the conversation between these two men, DeLong Rice, pictured here, and the author of the book, Otto Eisenschimmel. So I decided to look a little bit more into Otto Eisenschimmel, first his father, to find out more about his military experience in the Civil War. I learned that his father's name was Alexander Eisenschimmel and that he was born and died in Vienna, Austria. I could find no evidence that he ever stepped foot or lived, let alone lived in the United States or the Confederate States. Also, I was not able to find a military service record for him. Why he told DeLong Rice that he had a father who served in the army and was at Shiloh is a mystery. Perhaps he just wanted to make conversation and connect with the superintendents. Otto, in fact, was also born like his father in Austria, but different than his father. He came to America through Ellis Island in 1905. He was naturalized in 1944. A chemist by profession, he also developed a deep interest in his adopted country's Civil War. Otto had a particular fascination about the assassination of Abraham Lincoln, which I think is where you get to the reference in Otto's book about Shiloh. When he's talking about the what ifs, he ends by talking about the fact that that Lincoln might not have been assassinated because Grant would not have won the battle of Shiloh and therefore would not have been in Appomattox. Back to Otto, he wrote a bunch of books, most of them focused on Abraham Lincoln. His best known volume, Why Was Lincoln Murdered?, published in 1937, suggests that Lincoln's Secretary of War, Edwin M. Stanton, not John Wilkes Booth, was the mastermind of the plot to kill President Lincoln. Eisenschimmel built a rather circumstantial case of what ifs that has been both widely debunked and built upon by conspiracy theorists. So thanks for listening to the story of the what ifs, the Shiloh battle, Grant, Abraham Lincoln, Otto Eisenschimmel, and of course, DeLong Rice, the superintendent of the battlefield. We'll see you on the next episode of Life on the Civil War Research Trail.